You're listening to the Bible Thumping Wingnut Show, the show that's safe for the whole family. Unless your family contains professing atheists.
Todd Friel.
I love Todd. He's one of my favorite people. And when I first started hearing him, I thought, wow, I mean, he pushes the envelope with his humor and you know, subject matter. He's able to say things on the radio that I couldn't get by with, you know, but he's honest. He's just perfectly candid about stuff, and it manages to do it in such a likable way that he gets by with stuff I don't think anybody else could get by with. I mean, in terms of his just blunt honesty, because it doesn't come across as blunt. It comes across as, you know, well-meaning, lighthearted, and yet serious. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you acquire that combination of characteristics, but he manages to do it and do it consistently. When I first started hearing him, I thought, yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, he's more of a humorist than and he wrote to us and said, I'd like permission to use clips from John MacArthur's sermons. This was before we released all of John's sermons on the internet, right. You know, and he wanted permission to broadcast them excerpts on his radio program. And I said, we don't grant blanket permission like that to anybody. You know, you're going to have to write to us every time you want to use a clip and tell us this is what I want to excerpt, and here's what it's going to say. Which, of course, if you've ever listened to Todd, he's way too freewheeling to be able to do that, you know.
So basically,
it was the same thing
for Todd. It was no.
Yeah, it was like telling him no, you know. And I think he was obviously disappointed by that. But then it provoked me to want to listen to him, because you know, when he asked, "Can I use your stuff?" I wasn't familiar with him enough to know. I just told him we don't give anybody. It wasn't him personally, but we don't give anybody that kind of permission. I started to listen to him, and my first response was, well, I'm glad I told him no, because he's like unhinged.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. He sounds unhinged when you first hear him.
Yeah.
But then the more I listened, I thought, you know, he knows exactly where the line you don't cross is. Right. And he'll come right up to that line, but he never seemed to cross it. And I got addicted to listen to him. I listened to him for like 3 months, and I finally thought, you know, I ought to tell him yes, because I liked what he said. I agreed with almost every position he took. I thought the excerpts he did use from various people, he used in a tasteful way. He wasn't like mocking anybody or any of that. So after I'd listened to him for a couple of months or 3 months, I wrote him back and said, you know what, I'm going to change this for you and you only. I trust you enough to say, yeah, go ahead and use excerpts from John MacArthur. And as long as you don't alter the substance of what he's saying, we'll trust you.
Okay.
And I said, I'm going to keep listening. And, you know, if you mess up, I may withdraw this permission. But
yeah.
But, you know, the more I listened to him, the more I loved him. And he didn't know I was listening really faithfully on a daily basis. And in those days, he had a pretty close association with Kirk Cameron, who was going to our church at the time. And Kirk came up to me after I preached one Sunday and said something, and he asked me if I ever heard Way the Master Radio, it was called at the time, before it was Wretched.
Right.
And and I said, oh yeah, I listen every day. I listen to the podcast, so I hear it late, but I listen to every broadcast, and I love it, you know. And so he called Todd and said, you know, Phil Johnson listens to every single broadcast. And the very next day, Todd's on the radio making these vomiting sounds. And he's interacting with Tony, his news guy, and saying...
That Tony Miano at the time, right?
No, it was Tony...
Tony Verkenis.
Tony Verkenis.
Yeah, Tony Miano did that.
And a lot of people don't know this, but Tony Verkenis is in Minnesota. Yep. And Todd broadcasts from Atlanta, so they're not even close to each other, but I guess they watch over Skype and have microphones. I don't know what, but Todd's making these sounds like he's sick, and Tony asked him what's wrong, and he said, I just heard that Phil Johnson's listening to it, and he said, it makes me sick.
Yeah.
And so after that, he had this running joke that he did for 6 months. Every time he mentioned my name, he'd say, you know, Phil Johnson makes me sick. So that's our relationship. I make him sick.
Okay.